Imagine you are a young conductor gaining experience and you're walking towards your first rehearsal with a new orchestra. You've put some nice clothes. Not like this, maybe like this. Yeah, that's better. And now, deep down, you feel super confident about your score. You know everything about it. You know who plays what, in what time, and just exactly how you want it to sound. Imagine you feel free like a bird, like a conducting bird. Okay, thanks, Bert. You're able to connect with the musicians and to make music together. This feeling is like Hello everyone, my name is Gabriel Hollander and welcome to this new video. Today I'll share with you 3 tips so you can move forward in your score study skills. Being able to really study a score in depth and to feel confident about the score in front of an orchestra or a choir or a wind ensemble or a brass band or a high school band or a university orchestra or whatever ensemble you're working with can really make that difference during the rehearsals. So without further ado, let's dive into it. Tip number 1. Practice a reduction of the score. Whatever your first instrument is, I highly recommend to practice a reduction of the score. Why is that? I'm glad you asked. When you look at your log score with all the different lines, it might look overwhelming at first. But if you practice and you learn to play a full score with your 2 hands, the music comes not only in your head, not only in your heart, it also comes in your body. Having the music in your body and in your fingers definitely helps to remember the music when you stand there on the podium. Of course, if you know your way around a keyboard instrument, you can play multiple parts at the same time. But honestly, it doesn't matter if you play the piano or the organ or the harpsichord or the clavichord or the synthesizer or the melodica or any other keyboard instrument, all are fine to practice reducing a score. However, it might seem a bit more complicated to make orchestral reductions with the non-keyboard instruments. But hey, why not be creative and try it out? For example, here is my take on a reduction of the first few bars on the 6th Symphony of Beethoven, and an enormous thanks to Pierre Sutra for making this video possible. On string instruments, it's possible to play full chords and some counterpoint. However, it's still another story with wind instruments. I mean, except if you want to go the route of the multiphonics, like Trent Hamilton is doing in his video. By the way, I highly recommend Trent's video here on YouTube, and there is a link in the description. Although I haven't heard anyone myself, I'd love to see someone play an orchestral reduction on one single woodwind or brass instrument, perhaps using multiphonics or any other technique. So if you've heard of anything, thanks for leaving a comment below. So let's go back to the keyboard route, and here is an example of a piano reduction I've made a while ago. It's a slow movement of the 2nd Symphony of Rachmaninoff, and there is a link also in the description below. And here is the same piece performed by the Radio Philharmonisch Orkest, conducted by Eivind Gullberg Jensen. Have a look in the description for a full performance. Many thanks to Avrodros for letting me use their footage in this video. Tip number 2, make it three-dimensional. An orchestra or choir sits in a three-dimensional space. Musicians sit next to each other like this, and they sit as well behind or in front of each other like this. And usually the musicians at the back also sit higher than the musicians at the front, so we have a vertical dimension as well. I highly recommend to study your scores while keeping track of these three dimensions. What I personally sometimes do is take some elements in my study room that represent the musician groups, like for example in this image. From left to right we have the first violins, the second violins, the violas, the celli and the basses. Now I use this object as visual representations of the real instrument groups, and I draw arrows in my mind going from one group to the next depending on where the music flows. Of course, some orchestras have different seating position than others, like instead of having the second violins next to the first, sometimes they are also across of the stage from each other. Or in some opera orchestras, the first violins are in the middle and some of the winds have their seat left from the conductor. Same thing applies to choirs, by the way. Some choirs prefer having two lines between men and women, while others prefer to mix up in creative ways. You'll find a link in the description below for an interesting article regarding choir positions. In an ideal situation, we would know the seating positions before even starting to practice with the choir or the orchestra. However, sometimes it's just simply not possible to have that information. So we have to improvise live. Tip number 3, total harmony understanding. I highly encourage always have a total understanding of the harmony in the piece. Of course, this doesn't apply to a modal or atonal piece, but in that case, we also have other frameworks to understand the music. So in a harmonic setting, it's also super helpful to know what exact instrument plays what note in the chord. For example, in the opening chords of Beethoven's Third Symphony, I'll use 3 colors to note the root, the third, and the fifth of the E-flat major chord. By the way, now you understand why you saw all those little colored circles throughout this video. Okay, back to Beethoven. What we now see from this exercise is that Beethoven orchestrated this first chord by giving most of the instrument to the root of the chord and some instruments to the third of the chord. However, the fifth of the chord can only be found as one of the notes in the first violins and in the second flute. So depending on how you want this chord to sound during a performance and with the practice, you could encourage the second flute player more to have that note heard. By the way, when my friend Joe Anna saw the colors on the score, it inspired him directly to make an artwork based on these colors. Here is a final version of his digital painting. So everyone, these were the 3 tips I wanted to share with you today regarding score study skills. I hope you found this useful and they will help you to continue your own journey into this magnificent field. Let me know what you think of these and feel free to share any other ideas you have in the comments below. Does any one of this approach make any sense for you? Do you also enjoy delving into the fine details of a score? Where do you find the balance between getting really deep into every note on the score and still having a general idea of the music? If you found this tip helpful and you really can't resist, then just go for it. Hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. I really appreciate it and this really helps. In return for your like, I will play a reduced version of this Beethoven symphony we discussed in this video. Until next time.